Case study presentation by Sarah Walker. Childhood obesity is becoming a major health problem within the U.S. Data from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey shows from 2009 to 2010, 34% of adolescents were overweight, 18% of adolescents were obese. Prevalence of overweight and obesity has nearly doubled in the past 2 decades. Children ages 2 to 5 years old went from 5% to 12.1%. Children ages 6 to 11 went from 6.5% to 18%, and children ages 12 to 19 went from 5% to 18.4%. Some risk factors for the development of overweight and obesity in children include having at least one overweight or obese parent, a low social economic status, being African American, Hispanic, American Indian, or Native Alaskan race or ethnicity, being diagnosed with a chronic or disabling condition that limits mobility, inadequate levels of physical activity, and genetics. Some environmental risk factors include excessive consumption of convenience food and foods from fast food restaurants, parent, family member, or peer influence, advertisements in media, genetic variation in taste preferences. Some health implications from being overweight or obese as an adolescent include hypertension, dyslipidemia, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, sleep apnea, hyperventilation disorders, orthopedic problems, hepatic disease, body image disturbances, and lowered self-esteem. The diagnosis of being overweight or obese as an adolescent includes an assessment of weight for height, which is the body mass index. The values are plotted using age and gender-specific growth charts. BMI values greater than the 85th percentile, but lower than the 95th percentile are considered overweight. If there are additional risk factors, there could be additional testing, which includes a fasting lipid level, AST and ALT, and fasting glucose level. BMI values above the 95th percentile are considered obese. If there are additional risk factors, a fasting lipid level, AST and ALT, fasting glucose level, and microalbumin levels could be obtained. Treatment for overweight and obesity in adolescents is through the national guidelines, which recommends a staged care process based on BMI, comorbid conditions, age, and progress with previous stages of treatment. There are 4 stages. Stage 1, which is the Prevention Plus, builds on basic nutrition and physical activity guidance recommended to promote health and prevent disease. This plan includes the consumption of at least 5 servings of fruit and vegetables per day, limiting sweetened beverage consumption, achieving at least 60 minutes of physical activity per day, limiting screen time to no more than 2 hours of non-academic time per day, the importance of consuming a daily breakfast, limiting takeout and restaurant meals, and participating in family meals at least 5 times per week. The second stage is the structured weight management. It's monitoring of food and nutrition behaviors by the adolescent and/or parent. This includes the reinforcement of the stage 1 goals, but with a modification. Screen time is reduced to 1 hour per day. Meal plans emphasize nutrient-dense food choices while minimizing energy-dense foods. Journals and logbooks are used to monitor target behaviors, and achievement goals should be rewarded with non-food items. Stage 3 is the comprehensive multidisciplinary intervention. It's provided by a team of healthcare professionals who specialize in pediatric obesity management. It's the same behavioral goals as Stage 2, but with a more structured multidisciplinary format with more frequent client contact. A detailed eating and physical activity plan is designed to lead negative caloric balance. A structured behavior modification program with weekly visits, typically between 8 and 12 weeks, and then followed by bi-monthly or more frequent contact with the adolescent and family. The fourth stage is tertiary care intervention. It's used for severely obese teens and those who have significant chronic comorbid condition that would necessitate intensive intervention. Adolescents are evaluated for their level of maturity to be sure of understanding of the high level of commitment that's required, as well as potential risk factors. It's provided through a tertiary weight management center, and in addition to diet and activity counseling and behavior modification, more intensive treatments may be warranted and could include meal replacement, very low energy diet, medication, and surgery. This nutrition assessment included a 14-year-old girl. Her height was 62 inches, her weight was 152.9 pounds, which categorized her as obese with a BMI of 28. The patient was previously measuring in the overweight category, but her weight has continued to increase 10 to 15 pounds each year for the past 6 years. Both of her parents are obese and have struggled with their weight. Her mother has a history of hyperlipidemia, and her father has a history of diabetes. On this slide, you can see the CDC growth charts for this patient. The first chart is the stature for age, which is placing her in the 30th percentile. The second chart is the BMI for age, which places her in the 96th percentile. And the third chart is the weight for age, which places her in the 92nd percentile. This slide shows the lab panel that was provided, which includes sodium, potassium, fasting glucose, cholesterol, HDL, LDL, and the triglycerides. The lab values showed that the electrolytes for sodium, potassium were within normal range. The fasting glucose was slightly elevated, which could indicate prediabetes and should require further testing. The total cholesterol and triglycerides were within normal range, and the LDL and the HDL were out of range. The LDL was elevated, which could lead to heart disease, but can be corrected with healthier eating, reducing the amount of saturated fat and increasing the amount of soluble fiber in the diet could correct this lab value. The low HDL level could also lead to heart disease, but could be corrected with regular exercise and weight loss. This slide shows the macronutrient, minerals, and vitamin recommendations for this patient. The calories were estimated around 1,800, with 59 grams of protein, 213 to 307 grams of carbohydrate, 26 grams of fiber, and 53 to 74 grams of total fat. The minerals and vitamins shows the recommended intake, and the final column shows the tolerable upper limit intake. This slide shows the 3-day food diary that was provided by the patient. Each day, the patient was asked to record their intake for each meal in the AM, lunch, and dinner. The 3-day diary was then analyzed and averaged. On this slide, you can see the results of the 3-day average. The results showed that the patient had an excessive intake of calories, protein, carbohydrate, and total fat. Excessive intake of these macronutrients could continue to attribute to weight gain, classification of obesity, and other health implications. Having a low fiber intake could lead to constipation. It could be improved with the consumption of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. The sodium intake was extremely excessive. Reducing the amount of processed and fast foods could help with this lab. Excessive intake could lead to elevated blood pressure, increasing the risk for stroke, heart disease, and kidney disease. The magnesium was slightly low. A deficiency could lead to fatigue or muscle cramping. Vitamin B1, B2, B3, B12, A, and C were all slightly elevated. Reducing the amount of processed and fast foods could help with lowering the elevation of these vitamins. B1 excessive intake could lead to excessive thirst, blurry vision. B2 excessive intake could lead to liver damage. B3 could lead to dizziness or rapid heartbeat, and B12 could lead to high blood pressure or dizziness. Though toxicity in vitamin A is rare, it could lead to visual disturbances, bone pain, and sunlight sensitivity. And vitamin C toxicity is also rare, but could lead to diarrhea and nausea. Vitamin D were slightly low. Vitamin D could be improved by spending some time daily in the sunlight or including fatty fish or fortified foods. Deficiency could lead to an increased risk of illness, fatigue, or tiredness. Supplementation may be needed, and serum levels should be checked. A deficiency in vitamin E could lead to difficulty with walking or coordination, muscle pain, weakness, and visual disturbances. Some nutritional issues include that the intake is contributing to the patient's weight status and elevated macronutrients. The patient is also predisposed to obesity, diabetes, and hyperlipidemia. Having a sedentary lifestyle could also be problematic and lead to further increased risk of health implications. Some recommendations include starting the first stage for weight management, which was the Prevention Plus. And this would include increased consumption of fruits and vegetables per day, limiting sweetened beverage consumption, achieving 60 minutes of exercise per day, limiting screen time to no more than 2 hours per day, limit takeout and restaurant meals, consuming healthier snacks, counseling the parents on role modeling healthy eating behaviors, consuming a daily vitamin, and referring the family to inquire about the SNAP benefit program. The family indicated that they often run out of money at the end of the month for food and have utilized fast food to save time and money. To provide examples for healthier meals and snacks, I developed a 3-day meal plan. This 3-day meal plan includes examples for breakfast, lunch, an afternoon snack, and an evening meal. This slide shows day 1. This slide shows day 2. And this slide shows day 3. This was all based off of the recommended macronutrients, vitamins, and minerals. This slide shows the references utilized for this presentation. Thank you.